What happened to you that no one believes actually happened? As someone who recently fell from the equivalent of that height, you got damn lucky. I'm jealous, haha. You died that day, and this is all just Post Malone. I was waiting to get the tube on the London Underground, one just pulled up but we decided it was too busy and we'd wait for the next one. There was a woman who kept staring at me, intense eye contact. She got on the crowded tube, and continued to stare. She turned to face the man next to her, whose back was turned. She then licked this guy's giant afro, unbeknownst to him, whilst maintaining eye contact with me. The doors closed and the tube went away. People think it's too random to be true. The memory is burned into my brain. Wholesome. I once saw a cat and a skunk startle one another, on opposite sides of a shed, and sprint around the corner to smack into each other. Classic Looney Tunes stuff. I fully admit how stupid this was, but I was swimming by myself in the Gulf in fairly clear water about 10 to 15 feet deep. My parents and sister were on the beach watching me. With how clear and calm the water was, I'd occasionally go under, blow out all my air, and just sit on the sandy bottom. I can open my eyes in short intervals in salt water, so I'd look around a bit. Once I settled on the bottom. During one of these drops to the bottom, I bumped into something and a giant, dark blob took up nearly my entire field of vision. When I opened my eyes, at first, I thought it was an alligator and I was a goner, but it turned out to be an equally startled manatee. I had no idea they could swim that fast. Most people don't believe me, but it was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. I walked in on my cat peeing in the toilet. I walked in, my cat stopped for a second as we stared at each other in disbelief. My cat finished peeing then ran out, ha ha ha. I was walking around my wooded driveway when I saw a young owl sitting on the ground. The next thing I know, I feel a sharp pain on the top of my head and look up to see a mama owl swoop off. No one believes me when I tell them I was attacked by an owl. Wholesome. I had a job interview in a town I'd never been in before. Got lost and decided to park the car, and walked up to a random stranger, some old man I never seen before. Asked him where I can find name of business. He politely tells me where to find it, and then says, "You're welcome, my first name and last name." I never told him my first and last name, just asked for directions. I was dumbfounded, and he just chuckles and walks off into some store. I think back to it every so often. I have an uncommon name, there's no way you can even guess it. Maybe he worked at the place you interviewed and got a heads up you were coming in. Then just pure coincidence, you ran into him. Strange lol. Wholesome. One time, I was at a Home Depot in Las Vegas with my wife. She's waiting in the checkout line, so I go into the tool area. There is a priest looking at tools, a full-on Orthodox priest with robes and hat, etc. I pay him no mind. I'm not religious, haven't been to a church since I was 11. As I walk past, he puts his hand on my shoulder and says my first name. My first thought was, this is what death actually looks like. Turns out it's a guy I used to smoke weed with in college, that I haven't seen in 10 years. When I was in the 11th grade, I was followed around by a crow. Crows are highly intelligent. If you fed it one day, even by accident, it's totally believable that it followed you around. Maybe it found your leftover lunch a few times, maybe you were a messy eater, and left a few crumbs each time you ate. Even if you accidentally fed that crow's parent, the parent can teach the kid that you are a food giver. They can recognize your face very easily. My dad picked me up and we went about 20 miles out to the countryside. He was visiting a friend who had a river run through his property. Dad wanted to talk to the guy about fishing. The guy also had a little shop selling knickknacks and ornaments. My dad is one of the stingiest people alive. He never buys anything. I begged him to let me choose a gift. He allowed me just one. I chose a small bluish Viking statue. It was half a set, but I definitely wasn't allowed to buy the woman Viking. Just one. When I got home, my mum said she had went for a drive that day with her partner, stopped at a tiny gift shop and bought a woman Viking statue. The other half of the set. Helpful. Wholesome. Silver 2, take my energy. I charged at a grizzly bear. I let my dog outside one night, while my husband was at work. The house we used to rent didn't have lights in the backyard, so I would shine a flashlight through the living room windows, into the yard when he went out. I was standing there watching my dog and he suddenly stopped and was staring at something. I whipped the flashlight in the direction he was looking, and less than 10 feet from him was a grizzly bear staring down my dog, with only a flimsy chicken wire fence between them. My mind quickly flashed to our safe upstairs, and I knew I didn't have enough time to get up there. So I ran outside towards the bear like a bridge troll, stomping, waving my arms to look big, blinding the bear with the flashlight, and yelled in the deepest and loudest voice I could muster. "Go away, bear. Leave him alone. Get out of here." The bear was shook, and just started off into the darkness. I ran down to my dog, and swooped his ass up and threw him inside and locked the door. In the same month, someone else in town had their dog killed by a bear when they let them outside at night. I've stopped telling people this story because no one believes I would actually charge at a bear, or they think I'm insane, but I fucking love my dog. I nearly drowned on the 4th of July, when I was 16. Parents, aunts and uncles were around the pool and didn't see anything, and insist it didn't happen because they would have seen it. I agreed to swim with my younger cousins. They were ecstatic that a big kid agreed to swim with them. I jump in and they immediately all dog pile on top of me, they're pushing me down in their excitement and I'm trying to get to the surface. I remember blacking out for a second and then thinking, I'm not dying in a fucking swimming pool. I did the only thing I could think of at the time. I went against my instincts and dove deeper into the deep end, and eventually got out from underneath my cousins and pulled myself out of the pool. Spent a few years growing up in a swim-positive environment. 100% believe you. They teach you over and over a drowning person does not look like you think a drowning person looks. Any lifeguard will tell you this. I went to my first festival in 1991, watched the opener at 10 a.m., with 100 other mostly uninterested people, and did not think too much of it. Half a year later, the band was all over the hit charts. The name of the group, Nirvana. My old man saw ELO play one of their first ever gigs, before they made it, in a shitty Birmingham club. A bunch of guys go on stage with violins, and shit and nobody liked it but my dad. End up one of the biggest bands of all time. I was meeting some friends for dinner, after work one night. We agreed to meet at a specific time and as I was leaving work, made note of the time. I knew I would be arriving late, because of my regular commute time, which was around half an hour. I take my usual route to their place, which is a straight shot. 20 minutes go by, I should almost be there, when I noticed the road was looking a little unfamiliar. I tried reading street signs and decided to take the next turn I came across. I follow the road an extra 10 minutes, and end up on a main road. The same road that leads from my work to my friend's place, that I thought I was on. From where I was my commute time was around 20 minutes. I did not make any turns while I was driving, have no idea how I ended up there. My friends were convinced, I probably just drove on autopilot or fell asleep at the wheel. You really can go into a sort of autopilot, and black out while driving, especially if it's a regular route and you're tired, like on the way to or from work. Went camping last year. Woke up to something pressing in on the tent down by my feet. Watched as the pressing in shook the whole side of the tent, and moved up from my feet to my hip. That's when I realized that whatever was pushing in on me was a human hand. Could clearly see the fingers outlined. Immediately took stock of everyone in my tent, all present and accounted for. Jumped up out of my cot. I was the only one who saw it. Everyone else told me to go back to bed. It was just a deer or something. Spent a good hour trying to convince myself I hadn't seen a hand. It could have been a raccoon. I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and at night they sound huge crashing around the brush. Adult raccoons can get quite big, and their paws look like hands. They try to get into fucking everything, so one messing with your tent would make sense. It also could have been a creep. You get weirdos in the parks sometimes. I was walking briskly to work, running late. Out of nowhere I felt the urge to pick a clover along the sidewalk. It was overflowing with cool fluffy clovers. The split second I started to bend over to swoop down mid-walk, I knew beforehand I was somehow going to pick a 4-leaf clover, and I did. I can't explain it. I was about 12, fell asleep on a road trip for a while. Before waking up I was dreaming we were going into a rest stop that had an ice pond area for walking, and a vending machine that had Fruitopia. Woke up, but we were still driving, but my dad declared he's taking the next exit. 10 minutes later it was the exact exit in my dream. When I was young I had hot oil spilled over the whole right-hand side of my body. Burned the shit out of me. Was blind in one eye, covered in patches for weeks. One day my mom took me into the hospital to get my dressings changed, and the doctor told her I would likely have to have plastic surgery and skin grafts as it wasn't healing. Go to change my dressings, and there's not a fucking mark on me. Completely healed. Eyesight normal. No one believes the story, so I just don't tell it anymore. Helpful. The doctor took off the bandages and said cancel the skin grafts. There was a toy pig an old couple gave to me and my roommates. Sometimes we would throw it at each other. One day it disappeared. I knew we'd thrown it in the corner of my bedroom, but it was gone. A few days later, we found it on the top shelf in the kitchen. I'm the only one who can reach that high. Over the next month or two that toy pig would keep disappearing and reappearing in random places. We all blamed it on each other until one day, it disappeared in the front room again. Me and my friends all went to the store. When we came back it was on the sidewalk in front of our house. After I left, one of my roommates threw it away because he thought it was haunted. Get a replacement, post it to him. Or break in and leave it on his bed. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe.